What I'm going to do today is I'm going to make cinnamon roll dough. And the reason I'm going to do that is because my son absolutely loves cinnamon rolls. So one of the things that I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to use a bread maker. This bread maker is one of my favorite tools that helps me to quickly prepare delicious breads, whether they're pizza dough, I can do dinner roll dough, but today my main focus right now is going to be on cooking cinnamon roll dough. The first thing I have to do, which is a multi-step process, is get the cinnamon roll dough inside the bread maker. The bread maker that I'm going to use today is called Oster. This is the second one that I've had. We used to be a family of 5, and now we're down to a family of 3. And so I don't have to cook as much bread as I used to in the past. So this is the second one that I've had. I've had it now for about 4 or 5 years. I don't use it as often. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started. If you are interested in purchasing this particular type of bread maker in order to cook your own fresh cinnamon rolls, take a look at the link at the bottom of this video and it'll show you how to get one that's very similar to this. The recipe that I'm using is calling for eggs. And so I'm going to get 1 egg and 1 cup of water. And so in this particular case, all I need is just 1. And I'm going to crack it just like that. And then all I'm going to do is just fill it up to make 1 cup of water. Now that I have my 1 cup of water, you'll notice that the egg is inside the bottom of the cup. I just pour this in here like so. It calls for 3 tablespoons of oil. So you'll notice that I have used here the extra virgin olive oil. It's unfiltered and it's cold pressed. You can really use any kind of oil you want. Sometimes when I run out, I substitute with something like grapeseed oil. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 1 tablespoon for this, but I'm going to do it 3 times because it needs 3 tablespoons. So we have 1, 2, and 3. The recipe calls for a 1/3 cup of sugar. So for this, I just normally keep my sugar in this type of container. So I'm going to put in the 1/3 cup of sugar. Okay. It calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. You can use any kind of salt you want. In my home right now, what I'm using is Eden sea salt, and so I'm going to scoop out 1 teaspoon of that. So I'll put that in there. And the next part of the recipe is looking for 3½ cups of bread flour. So the bread flour that I'm going to use is all natural and it has no preservatives. This particular recipe, I'm going to use the Bob's Red Mill bread flour, and it is enriched, it's unbrominated, unbleached white flour, and they point out that it's superb for bread making. So with that being said, that's what I'm going to use. And in this case, I'm going to use 3½ cups. And then I'll just do about 1/2 of what I've been putting in there for 3½ cups. That should do it. And the last thing I'm going to do is add 1½ teaspoons of yeast. Now for me, I've just taken yeast that I purchased from Sam's Club and I have just filled it in the mason jar. And in this case, I need 1½ teaspoons, so I'm just going to open this up. And I'm just going to scoop out the yeast. And one thing I need to point out, this is active yeast, so the ingredients do need for you to use active yeast if you're making this recipe. So this is going to be 1/2, and that's it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it inside the bread maker. So for it, I'm just going to put it in, and each bread maker is different, but when you slide it in, it should fit. I heard it snap just then. It fits into the keyed slot. At this point, I lower the handle and I lower the lid. And on this bread maker, I'm just going to change it from basic to dough. So I just press select until the red light lights up beside dough/pasta. It tells me it's going to take an hour and 30 minutes for this recipe to make. So that's what it looks like. And what I'm going to do is just press start. And here's what it looks like on the inside. I wanted to give you an idea of what this looks like as it spins. Looks like this. I've been doing this for a long time. It'll stop and it'll resume. We'll just keep going. The dough has finished for the cinnamon rolls, and what I'm going to do is lift this up so that you can see what this dough looks like. It's just now going off because it finished, but that's what the dough looks like. It's nice and smooth compared to what it looked like when I showed you a little bit earlier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the dough, and I'm going to use this side of my island. I've already wiped it off and sanitized it. The next thing that I'm going to do is add a little bit of flour to the surface, and then I'm going to roll out the cinnamon roll dough. What I'm going to do is just do a light dusting of the surface. Not a whole lot. I don't want to make a big mess. The next thing I'm going to do is just lift this out of the bread maker like so. And I've already shown you what it looks like. And I'm just going to remove the dough from the pan. And then the other thing I'm going to do is just remove this piece, which is the paddle to the bread maker. And basically what I do is I roll the cinnamon roll dough. And for me, it doesn't have to be perfect. However, I want it to be as close to a rectangular shape as possible. And at this point, I'll flip it over. And the length actually will dictate how many cinnamon rolls you can get out of it. In this particular case, I don't have a number in mind as long as I have more than 12, but the recipe says that you can get 24. So this is what it looks like. Next thing I'm going to do is add butter, and the butter I'm just going to spread it. I like to use real butter. I'm going to spread it over the dough, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like once I'm done. But basically, to get started, all I do is, just pull off a little bit, and I'm going to use this whole section, and for me that is the equivalent of 1 tablespoon, and I like to smear it. The truth is, if I have too much, then I tend to just keep it. But for all of this, I'm just going to spread all over the dough, just like you're seeing me do right now. And I do tend to remove my jewelry in terms of my rings when I'm doing this, except for my wedding band. So just an FYI. It just depends on what your preference is. And I just want to make sure I coat the whole entire area so that these cinnamon rolls turn out yummy. So the whole surface is now covered. So the next part I'm going to add in the cinnamon and the sugar. I'm going to sprinkle it onto this. In our family, we prefer to use simply organic cinnamon. I got this from Whole Foods, and this is what it looks like. I have about a quarter cup of sugar, probably not even that much. I don't like a lot of sugar on our cinnamon rolls. And so once I sprinkle a couple of shakes into here, I tend to shake it up like this just to get it mixed. And now what I do is I sprinkle this horizontally onto the cinnamon roll so that I get coverage going all the way across. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to have a good amount of coverage. And one other thing I do once I empty that is I tend to go in and sprinkle a little bit more cinnamon. I know each person's different, but that's just something I prefer. With that being said, at this point, you're going to take the horizontal, the longest side, and you're going to pick it up and start moving it forward. And so that's what I'm doing here. You're going to start rolling it into what we call a jelly roll. So this is what I do in order to form the shape for the cinnamon rolls. Okay. And so it's thickening up, and I tend to tuck my ends a little bit, push them in together as I roll forward. And this is really taking shape, so now I can do this. And so now we have that nice long cinnamon roll look. The next thing that we're going to do is take this and we're going to cut it into 1-inch sections using a knife. Okay, so now is when I actually need the grapeseed oil. So here, what I'm going to do is I have this pan. This is about 15 inches. I spray it with the grapeseed oil, and this keeps my cinnamon rolls from sticking, and it's actually going to give it a good place to rise. So first thing I'm going to do is cut these into about 1-inch sections. For me, I like to go ahead and pre-cut ahead of time before I start putting them in the pan. If you're going to let these rise for hours, because they can become very big, you might cut them a little bit smaller than 1 inch. But I like mine big and fluffy, and so does my son, so that's what I'm going to do. And you can see this is what it looks like. And I've ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I say that's more than enough cinnamon rolls for a family of 3. So I'm going to just sit these in the pan, and I'll show you what this looks like. Sometimes I try to zigzag the way I place them in until I run out of space. It really depends on the size of your pan. And if I really want to make a lot of cinnamon rolls, I might cut them smaller and spread them out over 2 pans. But when I say that, I mean like 2 9x13s. And what I tend to do is just take these and freeze one of the bags for my son so he can enjoy these throughout the week. And I'll squeeze one right there. That's kind of tight. And so this is what that looks like. And all I'm going to do now is cover this and let it sit. Now, according to my instructions, you let this sit for about 30 minutes. I want mine to become really big, and so I'm going to let mine sit a little longer than 30 minutes. There you have it. That's what you do in order to make the cinnamon roll dough using the bread maker. So at this point, what I wanted to do was give you an idea, or really a visual, on what these look like. So right now, here's what the cinnamon rolls are looking like. They're sliding a little bit, so I want to turn it the other way. But they're filling the pan, and so basically, at this point, I can start cooking them, and they're going to be fluffy, yummy. So that's it in terms of what it looks like if you let it rise for about 30 minutes. It'll be almost ready to cook. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what these cinnamon rolls look like. They've risen some more, and again, they're sliding around. So I'm in the process of getting ready to cook them. The cinnamon rolls are done. Here's what they look like. They look very yummy. They've expanded in size, and they're ready to eat once I put the topping on it. I will say that I cooked it for 15 minutes, 7.5 minutes on the bottom and 7.5 minutes on the top. And that way they remain nice and chewy. And when you see me touch it, you can see they press in a little bit and they're not too firm. What I have here is one of the cinnamon rolls with icing. This icing I made with 1 8-ounce pack of cream cheese. Most of the time, what I'll do is use cream cheese from Trader Joe's. So for example, I'll buy an 8-ounce pack of cream cheese from Trader Joe's and I'll put that inside of a bowl. Then I'll add in just a little bit of almond original milk. And for this, I just put in a little bit. The third ingredient I add is powdered sugar. And this is organic powdered sugar that I get from Whole Foods. So I mix that with the cream cheese and a little bit of milk, and I make the icing as thick or as thin as I want. Sometimes I want it thinner, sometimes I want it thicker. I just ice the cinnamon roll. So in this case, I'm just going to add a little bit of cream cheese. And I say a little bit, I just mean enough to cover and drizzle down the top. This is how my son likes it. And like I said, this is one of his favorites. And there you have it. That's it. Hope you enjoy.